Welcome to today's lesson. We are going to look at probability. Probability is simply the possibility of an event happening. That possibility that an event is going to happen. For instance, there can be a possibility that it is going to rain tomorrow, or for those who are fans of football, maybe you are a fan of a certain team, then there is a possibility that you are feeling there is a possibility of your team winning in a particular match and so on. So probability is simply that possibility of a chance happening or of an event happening. So that possibility that an event is going to occur is whatever we are referring to as probability. In probability, there are so many terminologies that are attached to it. So we start by looking at some of the terminologies that are used in probability. So the first terminology we are looking at is we are defining chance experiment. That is the first terminology that is used in probability, and we are saying that chance experiment simply refers to an activity that may produce a variety of different results which occur randomly. So there are a variety of different results that will be achieved when a certain activity has been done. For instance, when you roll a die or rolling a die is a chance experiment. So rolling a die could be an example of a chance experiment. Another example could be tossing a coin. So chance experiment, we are simply saying that it's that activity that may produce a variety of different results which will occur randomly. So when you roll a die has 6 sides labeled 1 to 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. A coin has 2 sides. We have a head or a tail. So when you are having to carry out this activity, what is the activity you are doing? You are rolling. You are rolling a die. This die is likely to produce different results. You are likely to get a 1, you are likely to get a 2, you are likely to roll a 3, likely to roll a 4, a 5, or a 6. The same thing is happening. The activity you are engaging in here is tossing. You are tossing a coin. And in the process of tossing a coin, there is a possibility of getting a head, there is a possibility of getting a tail. So we say whatever you've done, the process of rolling a die and tossing a coin, we refer to it as a chance experiment. The next term So we are having trials as another terminology used, and we are simply defining trials as this is when an experiment is performed one or more times. Each occurrence will be called a trial. For instance, you are rolling a die 50 times. So you are having 50 trials that have been taken at this point. So each occurrence that has been done, it will mean that that is a trial. So in this case, we have 50 trials in rolling a die 50 times. Then you are tossing a coin 3 times. Then it means you've carried out 3 trials in this case. So what do we mean? When you are having an experiment being performed once or more times, then it means that each occurrence that you are having or each occurrence that you are performing, then that is a trial you are carrying out. So you can carry out 5 trials, 10 trials, 50 trials, and so on, depending with the purpose or the intention of whatever you need to achieve. Another terminology used in probability is outcome. So we are talking about an outcome, and we are defining an outcome as one of the possible results of a chance experiment. So what is that possible result that is likely to occur? So in an experiment, in a chance experiment, an example of a chance experiment we gave was rolling a die. So in the process of rolling a die, we say a die has 6 sides from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So having the 6 faces, there is a possibility that in the process of rolling that die, you will roll a 5. So this possibility of rolling a 5, then we say that this is an outcome. So an outcome is simply one of the possible results in a chance experiment. So that possible result that will be obtained. When you are tossing a coin, there is a possibility of tossing a head or tossing a tail. So this possibility of tossing a head, that outcome that has been attained, then we refer to it as an outcome. Then the next terminology we have . So we are talking about equally likely outcomes. These are equally likely outcomes. We are simply saying that equally likely outcomes are those 2 or more results that have the same chance of occurring. They have the same chance of occurring. None of them is being favored. They all have the same chance of occurring. In this case, we are talking about rolling a die. In the process of rolling a die, then there are 6 possibilities that are expected to happen. It is possible that you are going to roll a 1. So we are having the probability of rolling a 1. We have probability of rolling a 2. We have probability of rolling a 3, probability of rolling a 4, or probability of rolling a 5, or the probability of rolling a 6. We get that we have 6 total outcomes. And in each case, the probability of rolling a 1 is 1 over 6. Probability of rolling a 2 is still 1 over 6. Probability of rolling a 3 is still 1 over 6. Probability of rolling a 4 is 1 over 6. Probability of rolling a 5, it is still 1 over 6. Probability of rolling a 6 is still 1 over 6. In the case of tossing a coin, we are expecting 2 outcomes, either a head or a tail. So probability of tossing a head is 1 over 2. Probability of tossing a tail is also 1/2. So what do we discover? That all these outcomes in the process of rolling a die, they have equal chances, or they have the same chance of occurring. So since they have the same chance of occurring, we say that these outcomes are what are called equally likely outcomes, because they have the same chance. None of them is being favored, so they have the same chance of occurring. So we refer to them as equally likely outcomes. The same thing on tossing a coin. We are having a head and a tail, and none of them is being favored. Getting a head is a half, getting a tail is a half. So none of this outcome is being favored. So since none of them is being favored, we say that the outcomes are equally likely outcomes. The next terminology used So a set of all possible outcomes in an experiment, that combination of all possible outcomes that are likely to occur when you carry out a chance experiment, is what we are referring to as a sample space. With an example, you are having rolling a die. So when you are rolling a die, there is a possibility that a 1 will show, 2 will show, 3 will show, 4 will show, 5 or even 6. So we are having 6 possibilities, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we write them in brace. Then we say that this is a sample space of rolling a die. So all these outcomes are possible. There is a possibility of all these outcomes occurring when a die is rolled. So we mean the sample space of rolling a die is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 written in brace. If you are having a coin, then there are 2 possibilities, either a head or a tail occurring. So this possibility of these chances occurring, then we say that this is a sample space for the tossing of a coin. So an event is another terminology used when it comes to probability. So we are simply defining an event as one outcome or a collection of outcomes. So when you are tossing a coin, there are outcomes that are expected. So if you pick one of the outcome out of those that has been listed, out of the sample space, you pick one of the outcome or a collection of outcomes from that sample space, then we say whatever has happened is an event. For instance, we are tossing a coin. Then we are asked, what is the probability of getting a head? So you've picked one of the outcome out of the 2 outcomes that are expected. So probability of getting a head, this is an event. You are rolling a die and we are expecting 6 outcomes. Then a question asks you, what is the probability of getting a 5? So probability of 5 is an event. You've picked one outcome out of the several outcomes that you have. You can be asked, what is the probability of getting an even number when a die is rolled? So you are supposed to identify between 1 and 6, what are the even numbers you have? So we choose the even numbers. So you get that the even numbers are 3. So probability of even numbers, that is a collection of outcomes. I've picked collection of outcomes from my sample space. So picking collection of outcomes or one of the outcome from those sample space, then we say whatever has been picked is an event. So probability of a head, probability of a 5, probability of an even number showing, then we refer to them as an event. So we are having compound event. We first looked at an event and we said that an event is simply one of the outcome or a collection of outcomes. So we are now extending that to a compound event. And we are saying a compound event is a collection of two or more. So when you're talking about an event can either be one or more. But when you're having two or more outcomes from a sample space, then whatever you are having is a compound event. So collection, when you're having several of them being discussed, then it means that you are having a collection of two or more outcomes from that sample space. So when there are two or more outcomes that are being sampled out, then we say what has been formed is a compound event. For instance, you can be asked, what is the probability of getting a head or a tail when this coin has been tossed maybe 4 times or so on? So you are going to get these, you have several outcomes that are going to occur in that given case. You'll get a collection of outcome. You'll get several heads, you will get several tails from that given outcome. So it means their collection, there will be two or more outcomes from that experiment that has been carried out. When you are being asked about probability of an even number, or you are being asked probability of an odd number when you are rolling a die, then in this case you are having more than 2 outcomes, or you have 2 and above outcomes. So when you are having any combination of 2 and above outcomes in an event or out of the sample space that you have, then we say whatever has happened is that you are having a compound event in that given order. The next terminology used so we are talking about mutually exclusive events. With the mutually exclusive events, we are saying its meaning is simply when you are having 2 or more events that are mutually exclusive, then the occurrence of one event does not share the outcome with the other event. So there is no sharing of the outcome. The outcome is not shared between the 2 events. So what do we mean? For instance, we are rolling a die. Then we are finding the probability of rolling a 5, and someone else is finding probability of getting an even number. So we are having probability of getting a 5 or probability of getting, let's say, a 3. So probability of getting a 3 when we are rolling a die, it is 1/6. Probability of getting an even number, even numbers from a die are 3. So when we are having 3, then the possible outcomes are 3, the total outcome are 6. So we are having that the probability of rolling a 3 is 1/6. Probability of rolling even numbers is 3/6. So you find that these outcomes are not being shared at all. So this is just 1/2 and this is 1/6. They are not being shared. So when you get that 2 or more events will be said to be mutually exclusive if they share no outcome. This one is 1/2, this one is 1/6. There is no relationship between the 2 outcomes. So they don't share the outcome. Then we say that the 2 events or 2 or more events will be mutually exclusive. So we are having non-mutually exclusive events as another terminology that is used when it comes to probability. And we are saying that events will be referred to as non-mutually exclusive if they share one or more outcomes. So there is some sharing in between. They share one or more outcome in the process. Then we say those events are non-mutually exclusive. Once they share the outcome. The previous one that we've talked about is mutually exclusive events, and we said that they don't share outcomes. But in this case, they share outcomes. In that, if I'm having probability of 3, then the other question is asking about probability of an odd number. Then we all know that 3 is an odd number. So probability of 3, there is a possibility of odd number, in this case, an odd number being 3. So it means that these events have shared an outcome. There is an outcome that has been shared in the process. So this one, we refer to them as non-mutually exclusive events. In that, there is sharing of outcomes. If I try to mention the odd numbers here, we have 1, we have 3, as we have 5 as odd numbers. So we discover that if you are being asked about probability of odd numbers, then it means I'm going to get probability of 1, I'm going to get probability of 3, I'm going to get probability of 5. And in the process, there is a 3 that was asked earlier. So it means this second part is sharing an outcome with the first part. So once they have shared an outcome, then we say the two events are non-mutually exclusive events. The next terminology, we have complementary events. So if you are dividing the outcomes in a sample space into two events, you are dividing them into two events. So you are having a sample space, like for instance, you are having rolling a die. Then we divide these outcomes, that the sample space 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We divide them into two events. Then we say whatever the events have been divided into, the two events that have been divided into, they are referred to as complementary events. For instance, we are talking about rolling a die. When we are rolling a die, our sample space we've said is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I divide them into two events such that the first event is maybe probability of getting a 1 or a 2. Then the second event is the remaining numbers, so that we have probability of getting a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or a 6. So when I've divided my sample space into two events, then it means that whatever events have been created are what we are referring to as complementary events. When you are having to toss a coin, then we said our sample space is a head and a tail. So if our sample space is a head and a tail, then I divide them into two events, that is probability of a head and probability of a tail. Then I've divided my sample space into two events. So dividing the sample space into two events, the two events that will be created are whatever we are calling complementary events. So a complement, the previous one we've defined complementary events. Then we are talking about a complement. And we are saying that if an experiment was performed and there was an event that did not occur. So if it interfered with one of the event that occurred, then it means its complement occurred. So what are we saying? If we are having to toss a coin, then in the process of tossing a coin, a head does not show. The head does not show, but instead a tail shows. So what does this mean? If the head did not show, then the tail is the complement. So that event that has happened when another event has not happened is whatever we are referring to as a complement. It occurs when the other event has not happened. So we have favorable outcome or outcomes as another terminology. When something is being favored, it means that it has more chances than the others appearing. So when you're talking about a favorable outcome, then an outcome will be favored. So we are saying that a favorable outcome or outcomes, an outcome is favored when they are part of some desired event. So when it is being desired, it must appear in an event. Then we say that this is a favorable outcome. When it appears, there is, in some cases, before you continue rolling a die, you will find that the die has to be rolled on 6 first. So you find that the 6 has been favored. So what does it mean? It has to appear before, it has to appear in the desired event. So the 6 must appear if it is desired. So if it is favorable, if it is a favorable outcome, then the 6 will appear in that outcome. So we are saying that a favorable outcome is that outcome that will appear in a desired event. So we are talking about theoretical probability as another terminology used. Theoretical probability is the same as likelihood or a chance that has occurred. So what is theoretical probability? It is the actual chance that an event will happen. In this case, there is no practical activity that has taken place, but it is what is expected. It is the actual fact that is expected whenever you are carrying out a certain activity. So that actual chance of that activity happening, then we say that the type of probability that is taking place is the theoretical probability. For instance, we are talking about rolling a die. When you are rolling a die, then it is theoretical that probability of getting a 1 is 1 over 6, probability of getting a 2 is also 1 over 6, and so on. So all the numbers in that die have equal chances of appearing. But when you go and carry out the practical part of it, it is not a must that when you are rolling a die, you'll get a 1. You'll get any of the numbers on that die. But it is theoretical that anytime you are rolling a die, then the probability of getting those numbers is 1 over 6. Probability of getting a 2 is 1 over 6. Probability of getting a 3 is 1 over 6, and so on. So this is what we are referring to as theoretical probability. It is whereby you are using the knowledge that you already know about that given activity that is being carried out to find out what is the chance of that activity happening. So we can just, now that we already have that knowledge, we can look at an example of just one question on theoretical probability before we move on to the next definition. So an example could be, So we are having the question that this die has been rolled 50 times. Then out of the 50 times, 5 showed 7 times, or 5 was rolled 7 times. What is the probability of rolling a 5 in this experiment? It is already theoretical, it has already been written down, and we all know the outcomes that have been obtained. We've already been given the outcomes. So how do we get this probability? So the probability of rolling a 5 in this question will be obtained by the number of favorable outcomes over the total outcomes that were there. So favorable outcome, we said that those are the outcomes that event has to occur. That event has to be included, or that activity has to be included in that given event. So in this case, our favorable outcome was 7, where 5 had to show up in these 7 roll-ins. In the 7 roll-ins out of the 50, 5 showed 7 times. So this means that this was the favorable outcomes for 5 in this case. So our favorable outcomes are 7. Then the total outcomes in this given experiment were 50. So I've not carried out the experiment, but from the question, we can simply get to know what is the probability of that given given situation. So we are having 5 appeared 7 times, then the total outcomes are 50. So it means theoretical probability in this case was 7 out of 50. If you're not going to carry out a theory work, then it means another way in which you can get your results is through experiments. So the other type of probability we have is experimental. So when you carry out the probability of a given event using a number of trials. Trials, we had already defined earlier what trials are. So when you are carrying out a probability of a given event using a number of trials, then it means whatever you've done is experimental. You've carried it out experimentally. In that, you do not have to go ahead and you do not have to use the existing knowledge already, but you carry out the practical itself. If it is tossing a coin, you go ahead and toss it practically. Then we are saying whatever you've done is experimental probability. Looking at the two types of probability, then it is important to note that probabilities can be expressed in the following way. You can express probability as a fraction. That is, we can say probability of tossing a head is 1/2. So this is, I've expressed it as a fraction. You can express probability as a decimal. 1/2 can be expressed as a decimal, that is 0.5. Or we can express probability as a percentage. So if it is as a percentage, then 0.5 is the same as 50%. So this is expressing it as a decimal, and this is expressing it as a percentage. So all the three ways are accepted when you are expressing probability. So you can express that probability as a fraction. We can express the probability as a decimal. We can express the probability as a percentage. So those are the various ways in which probability is expressed. And as we express these probabilities, then there are chances in which probability will happen. There are chances that the event will not happen or the event will happen. So we have a range of terms that are also used when we are describing a range of the probabilities that we are expecting. We will say that the probability is certain if you are very sure that that event is going to happen. For instance, if you are going to roll a die, then a die has a sample space of 1 all the way to 6. Then somebody asks, what is the probability of getting a digit that is less than 7? So if you're being asked for a digit that is less than 7, then it is automatic. There is no way you will roll a die and not get a digit that is less than 7. It is very automatic. So a certain probability is a probability that you are very sure of. Then this probability, we say you are 100%, or it is 1. The probability will range between 0 and 1. So if this is the probability we have, our probability ranges between 0 and 1. If it is 0, then you are very sure that it is not going to happen. If it is 1, then you are very sure that the event is going to happen. Then in between is where you are sure or you are not, something is going, it will either happen or it may not happen. So in between 1 and 0, the activity or the event may take place or the event may not take place. So these are some of the terms that we use when we are dealing with probability. So I guess this is one of the most interesting topics we are going to deal with in mathematics, because probability, we come across it in our day-to-day lives in one way or another. Gambling processes, watching football, and so on will always require a knowledge on probability. Starting up a business, there is probability of you either getting a loss or getting a profit. So this means that it is a very practical topic in our day-to-day life. So I hope that as we move on with the topic, we are going to enjoy more. Thank you.